Spokesperson Michelle Brown.
Officer. Cabinet Secretary, Philip Hammond recently said that he was considering slashing tuition fees at HE institutions in England to the tune of £5,000 a year. So we've got the situation where the tuition fees may be going down in England, and you've introduced new student loans in Wales. So basically, so that Welsh students are going to be looking at England, if they actually do this, and think, well, I'm going to be getting into less debt if I go and study in England. What's your assessment of the potential move suggested by Philip Hammond? And are you likely to reduce tuition fees here to get in ahead of the game to attract students back to Wales?
The Welsh Government has been clear in its belief that the English and Welsh higher education system do not operate in isolation, and we must provide the financial and regulatory framework to allow our institutions to compete both domestically and internationally. And on that basis, I am watching the policy position in England very closely, and I will consider the implications of any changes before bringing forward legislation here in this chamber. For 2017 and 2018, the fee level in Wales is currently lower than the maximum allowed in England.
Well, thank you for that answer, Cabinet Secretary. According to figures given by the BBC earlier this year, student debt in Wales is estimated to be about £3.7 billion, with the average graduate debt in Wales already approximately just over £19,000. That was before you effectively forced Welsh students to get into further debt. You can say that the debt's incurred in return for the so-called graduate premium, but let's remember that those graduates are going to be paying tax through the nose in later life, like the rest of us. So it's rather a red herring. As I said, you've decided to jack up the debts of Welsh students even further. They're going to end up with debts the size of a mortgage that it will take years to pay off just as they're starting out in life. Do you think this helps the Welsh economy, and if so, how?
One announcement that has been made by the Conservative government in Westminster, which I welcome very much indeed, and that is that they have agreed to change the repayment threshold for student loans. In fact, I wrote to Joe Johnson, the Minister of Universities and Science, back in July and in September of this year, outlining my concerns about the amount of interest that was being paid on loans and the issue of the threshold. So I welcome very much the decision to increase the threshold to around £25,000, and I will work with the UK Government to ensure that that change can be implemented here in Wales first. But what the member does not recognise and does not acknowledge that the true barriers for people, especially from a poorer background, accessing higher education is not the issue around fee loans, it is the issue of upfront costs. How do you pay for your accommodation? How do you pay for your resources? And that's why this government is introducing the most progressive system of student support for undergraduates, part-time students and postgraduates anywhere in Europe.
Well, Cabinet Secretary, you can call it progressive if you like. I call it saddling young people with debt. At the end, so we are where we are anyway. I mean, you're taking the position that you are. Like I said, these students are going to be incurring large amounts of debt at a time in their life when they're perhaps not used to handling large amounts of money, running a monthly budget, running a quarterly budget effectively. So how are you going to ensure that these students get responsible and thorough financial advice before they take out the loans, so they're not doing things like taking out payday loans, credit cards to pay for accommodation that ultimately should be provided by the universities? So what support systems are you going to put in place to make sure that those students have the right financial advice before they enter into these decisions, and what kind of debt counselling are graduates going to have when they come out?
Let me be absolutely clear, because I'm not quite sure if the member understands. All students in Wales next year will qualify for a £1,000 non-repayable grant. For students from our poorest backgrounds, they will have the equivalent of a living wage whilst they study to pay for the very accommodation that you just talked about. This is the most progressive system anywhere in Europe. And you are right, there are issues around how we can support students to use their resources appropriately. And that's why we are working with the Students' Loan Company to see whether we could introduce those grants on a monthly basis rather than having simply a big cheque at the beginning of the year.